Hi, I'm Ellen from the Chili Dog. Like most knitters, I don't enjoy weaving in yarn tails. So when I'm knitting striped socks, like these crab walk socks, instead of cutting the yarn after each stripe and then joining a new one, I prefer using a different technique. I usually just carry the yarns up the inside of the sock, securing them by twisting them around each other every other round so they won't get snagged as I put my socks on. Be aware, this method can be a little bit fussy and it doesn't work in every stripy situation. So you'll need to decide if it's right for your project. If you're striping more than 3 colors, this may not be the best option because that twisted ridge will become quite thick. Also, if you're knitting striped socks with rounds that begin and end at the bottom of the foot, the ridge of those twisted yarns may not be comfortable to stand and step on all day. But I'm only using 2 colors for this pattern, and the rounds begin and end at the side of the sock, so let's get started. As I'm knitting, I like to have my working yarn cake beside me in a bowl on the floor. And since I'm usually an English style knitter, my yarn is to the right. If you're a continental style knitter, the yarn will be to the left. But I'll put it on the right since that's the way I knit. The non-working yarn sets in front of my knitting on my lap. Or sometimes if it fits, I'll stick it inside the sock I'm knitting just so it stays out of the way. When I get to the end of a round, I'm going to look closely at my knitting and I'm going to look at that horizontal bar in between the end of the round and the beginning of the round. And here I have things spread out quite a bit so that you can see it. In real life, you want to keep your stitches as close together as possible so you don't get any laddering or weird tension issues here. If the non-working yarn, in this case the white, is wrapped around that horizontal bar like it is here, I don't need to do anything special. I'm just going to make sure that that yarn is held down and out of the way, and I will continue on knitting my stripe. When I get to the end of the round again, I look at the horizontal bar between the last and first stitch, and this time the non-working yarn is not wrapped around that bar. So it's time for me to make my twist. I'm going to pick up the non-working yarn and wrap it one time around the working yarn. And you can wrap it either clockwise or counterclockwise around the working yarn. And either one is fine, just be consistent, and every time you wrap in that direction. And I tend to wrap counterclockwise, and it's just more comfortable for me. So I'm going to pick up my yarn ball and wrap that ball one time around the working yarn. And what this does is when I make the first stitch, it's going to catch the non-working yarn and hold it in place here on the inside of the sock so that I don't have a huge loop. As you're making that first stitch and wrapping your yarn, you just need to be careful. You don't need to pull the non-working yarn super tight. If you do, this edge, this ridge on the inside will start to gather up and you'll have some tension issues. But also if you leave the wrap too loose, you'll have a big loop there that will catch on your toe, which kind of defeats the purpose of what we're doing. So you just need to pay attention to your tension and find a nice balance somewhere in the middle. Once you've made the twist, you can go ahead, and I like to hold that non-working yarn down and out of the way And then I can make my first stitch and continue knitting around my sock. When it's time to make your next stripe, it's time to reposition your yarns so that the previous stripe color is sitting in your lap and the new stripe color is sitting at your side. Whichever way you have been twisting your yarns up to this point is the same direction that you'll twist your yarns as you reposition them to start the next stripe. So in my case, I'm going to make sure that I'm twisting counterclockwise because that's what I've been doing, but either direction is fine, just be consistent. Since I'm twisting counterclockwise, I'm going to have my old stripe come over the top counterclockwise and it will rest in my lap, and the new stripe will come down here to my side so that I can continue knitting. Again, as I knit this first stitch, no matter what happened in the previous round, as I'm knitting the first stitch of the new stripe, my yarn is going to catch and hold the yarn from the old stripe in place so that it doesn't get caught. So I'm just going to hold the old stripe yarn down and out of the way and then knit my first stitch. And again, just pay attention to your tension so that you're not bunching up the side, but also so that you don't have a loose strand here down the side. And then you can just continue knitting on. I hope you enjoyed learning how to twist and carry yarns up the inside of your striped socks so you can minimize the number of yarn tails you'll need to weave in later. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your knitting friends. If you'd like to try this technique in a pattern, head over to the shop section of thechillydog.com and look for my crab walk socks. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!